Hello and welcome to my capstone podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about pigs. I have three main questions that I'm going to ask, and I'm also going to do a short meditation on two ideas about pigs. So let's get into it. Actually, quickly before we do that, I want to say that this podcast is really a product of two pieces: some intra work on my own relation to pigs and how they play in my life, and then some inter work, which is some research I did by looking at some videos, articles, podcasts, and talking with friends about pigs, and particularly the conversations and the research originated from thinking about pigs in the context of factory farms. But as I talked to my professor and got to know some people's perspectives on pigs, I started to expand my field of view, my scope, and try to capture more ideas to try to really just learn and kind of explore how people and culture relates to pigs, so that I can get a better idea of how of those things, and that might change how I think about it. So I mentioned I'm going to start with three questions. The first question is, how do pigs fit into society's narratives of beauty and love? So I think this is a really interesting question because when I think of beauty, I think of, humans. And I think that a lot of that has to do with my own kind of personal appreciations and my own biases as a human. And it sounds kind of funny to think about, why would I think other animals are beautiful? And I guess a lot of people might appreciate other animals and their beauty. I guess that's not such an uncommon thing, but I guess my first instinct when I think of beauty is I think of like kind of people of the opposite sex, or just like a human. I think that that really speaks to my own biases about myself. Like if I were another animal, I wonder what the first thing I would think of when say I could talk. The first thing I would think of when someone asked me what I think about with beauty, and I would guess that I would think about, if I were a pig, I would probably think about other pigs. Of course, pigs. One thing I think about is my mom once she was a principal, and she had to kiss a pig. And it was kind of this school, like, everyone went to go see my mom kiss a pig, and I think there was a fundraiser or something. And so I think that kind of speaks to that. I think the intention of that like display was irony, that, pigs are kind of seen as gross, and like dirty, and they play in dirt and stuff. And so kissing a pig is a little bit repulsive. And that's the reason why they did it, was kind of for irony. So I think that pigs really don't fit into society's narratives of beauty and love, or if they do, it's for comedic effect. And I think that kind of speaks to like the like surface levelness of beauty, like kind of the first impressions of beauty and love. But I think that, when people talk about like their deeper experiences with beauty and love, they might talk about digging past those surface level things of just like what people look like or what things look like, and their experiences of learning, their experiences of understanding how things change and grow and adapt. And I think that that's something you get by spending time with something. And so I think the reason why, personally, I don't think of pigs when I think of Beauty and Love is because I haven't spent a lot of time like with them or kind of around them, getting to know them. Because what I've read has been that they do have personalities. According to one report, pigs exhibit many characteristics, such as responding emotionally to music, demonstrating personality, and a repetitive set of emotional, cognitive, and behavioral states. And so I think that experiencing a pig in everyday life commonly would probably shatter my first impressions of them and allow me to see their deeper beauty. So I think that really speaks to, again, spending time around something and getting to know it really does affect how one experiences something and just their views on something. Yeah, okay. So, nice. I think I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, how do our ideas of pigs change over time as we get older? So for part of my research, I looked at the book Animal Farm, kind of a well-known literary staple in America. I read it in freshman year of high school, and I think other people, my peers, have also read it. And so when I was researching, I saw a couple clips of kind of the pigs in like a cartoon, I guess a cartoon rendition of Animal Farm. And it reminded me of the way animals are often, I think the term is anthropomorphized, as in cartoons. It also makes me think of like Donald Duck and like some Disney characters. And that idea that animals are kind of presented in cartoons commonly, and that cartoons are often watched by kids. And so I just think it's really interesting that animals are really a big part of like the media that kids consume. And they're also kind of, I think like animals are also associated with kids in other ways, like stuffed animals tend to be like animals. Actually, yeah, stuff it's in the name. And so just I feel like there's a close association with animals and kids, in like a very warm and affectionate way. Like kids also love to go to the zoo. So there's really a respect like cultivated at a young age for kids, for animals. And I think that to me, there is great irony then when animals are eaten. That's one reason I like really interested in this topic, is because I just feel like there's a lot of cognitive dissonance around respect for animals, but also eating them, which I feel like isn't a form of respect. One of my friends, I feel like when I interviewed people about this topic, their responses highlighted that contrast. Like one of my friends, Will Clausen, said, "Factory farming makes me sad." But he is a pretty avid consumer of pork or pig meat. And then another one of my friends says that she is against animal cruelty, but she eats meat because of convenience, or it's just what she wants. That's my friend Gina, who's also in this class. And then, so I think that maybe it's not as we get older, there's less respect for animals. I think there still is that, but people might watch some of these documentaries about like pig abuse and not, or general animal abuse, and not necessarily change their consumption behaviors. So it's definitely, I think that invites cognitive dissonance and less, if you're not changing those behaviors, then your brain might try to provide less affection for animals because there's this conflict in your brain. I also think that as I look at people, more kind of adults, there is some people that really associate like meat with, and I guess therefore animals and like the butchering of animals with like masculinity, or just really kind of as like a toughness thing. And so, but it really is only associated with like the animals that are eaten. Like whereas with other animals like dogs, and cats and horses, like there's still that level of affection as people get older. And I think, so animals like pigs have a unique relation to people in their old age, and that I think there's not a lot of proximity to them as people get older. And so that going back to Animal Farm, I think maybe that's something that enabled George Orwell to use them as like a tool, a literary tool to represent politicians. The pigs represent Stalin and Trotsky, and so because they're associated with kind of like childhood, and like especially the cartoon images of pigs, that Orwell could like get away with using pigs as this tool. There's kind of I guess it's not as direct, whereas if he just wrote a book about politics, it would kind of be a little bit less interesting. So I think there's definitely more to be understood there, how our ideas of pigs change over time as we get older. I guess I want to move on to the next question, which is, how do pigs relate to our everyday experiences? Some of the examples of everyday experiences I wrote down were walking to class, eating food, or even going on the internet. And that last one, I think, makes me is intriguing because I feel like going on the internet makes me feel a lot more robotic or like disconnected from other animals, and that kind of makes me feel separate from them. And so I think that pigs are not really a part of our everyday experiences, at least not mine. I guess for some people they are. In researching this topic, I learned that, some of the stories of people who farm pigs, and there are different sides. One person, an NPR reporter, went into like a barn in Iowa and saw lots of pigs, a dark barn where they were really crammed in, and described the experience as being like physically slapped in the face, and so that kind of speaks to the grunginess of experiencing like lots of pigs and and their like fecal matter and with disease and that kind of thing. And another farmer from the Netherlands talked about having to euthanize piglets and how he kind of experienced seizures afterward because he had euthanized the healthy pigs. He just kind of felt a lot of tension within himself, it sounds like, from that experience. And so, those kind of experiences are definitely more traumatic than my own experiences with pigs, and I think speaks to how different people experience different sides of an issue. And of course, pigs are such a broad topic. It's not like, it's not like they're an inanimate object that people use for the same use. They're, once again, like I was describing earlier, they have personalities and, repeated sets of emotions and behaviors. So they're people are bound to have drastically different experiences with them. And I wish I could interview more people about their experiences with them, because I'm sure there would be more stories. I think I did read somewhere that someone had a pet pig, and they were really they provide a lot of insight for that person, because like, for instance, the owner brought home like a boyfriend or something one day, and then the pig didn't really like him, and it turned out that person wasn't good for the owner of the pig, and kind of little stories like that where the pig is plays a big role in someone's life and is almost like a friend. I think that's really interesting. And obviously different from the story of the man euthanizing those pigs, kind of a very different relationship. I guess for some of the other everyday experiences, like walking to class or eating food, I guess walking to class makes me think of, with pigs, like, it makes me wonder, how fast they can go and just their speed and what life is like being in a kind of cage, or like in a farm where you don't have as much free roaming ability. But then again, I often, feel like getting in the habits of school and work, like a lot of people do the same kind of routine, driving to work or class or going on the bus, and, don't even get that much exercise. And I think that in general, people used to get a lot more exercise. And so maybe thinking about a pig's life in a farm or in a cage, it's kind of in some ways representative of, like, in general, people getting a little bit less exercise overall. So the last thing I want to do is do a short meditation on two things. And this may seem a bit kind of odd. Something I was trying to really pick my brain about, like, to do something that is very different from what I would normally do, of just kind of researching a topic and presenting an analysis on it, was I wanted to do a meditation on something. And the two things I thought about were like different kind of pigs. And so I thought about different pigs that people commonly experience, and the first one was, an alive, healthy pig, and the second one was I guess like a crammed in pig, or one that's really not healthy and sick, and so I'm gonna take about 30 seconds on each of them and just think about it, and I guess talk through my what I experienced. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so the first thing I thought about with the alive pig was, like, the texture of it. I guess I've always wondered how a pig feels, and like reminds me of like footballs are called pigskin. I don't know. I feel like the color it's very interesting. Like the ointment is pink. I feel like that's kind of an uncommon color in nature, and just like. Yeah, I guess it's interesting that I just kind of immediately think about the kind of the physical body of the pig, rather than like its intelligence or anything else. So I think that's really interesting. I'm going to move on to the dead pig just for the sake of time. But definitely I think this is an interesting exercise so far. Or sorry, not the dead pig. I meant the kind of cramped, more sick pig in like a factory farm. Okay, so that was interesting. I began to think about like kind of reducing the pig to a number, or like just it being among so many pigs that are experiencing the life being in a factory farm, and the life of and the other thing I thought about was kind of doing policy reports of researching pigs and just researching how they're treated, and I think that it's kind of easy to when you think about factory farming and watching documentaries about it, like how these animals are really reduced to numbers and just kind of seen in the context of their mistreatment, and not really their full capacity isn't really thought about. So I think that's really interesting. Okay, that really concludes this podcast. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.